Imagine a massive fraud scheme that didn't just steal money. Imagine one that actually weaponized government bureaucracy itself. During the pandemic, $250 million in taxpayer relief, money meant to feed hungry children, just vanished right out of Minnesota.
And that number is just, it's hard to even comprehend, $250 million. This case, centered on the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, or FOF as we'll call it, is now the country's single largest pandemic relief fraud.
And it wasn't a simple smash and grab.
No, not at all. It was a sophisticated, systematic takedown of the very oversight meant to protect those funds.
So in this deep dive, we're going to move past the headlines. We really want to understand the mechanics of how this happened. Our mission is to expose the sheer audacity of the crime, the systemic failures that allowed it to grow, and the very steep consequences for everyone involved.
And we're digging into some serious material here. We've got federal indictments, conviction records, and a really damning audit from the state's own legislative auditor.
Okay, so before we jump in, give us the one statistic, the one thing that tells the whole story.
Right. If you hold on to just one number, make it this one. Federal prosecutors found that of all the money FOF received, only 3% was actually spent on food.
3%.
So 97% of the money meant for children just went straight into the pockets of the people running the scam.
A 97% theft rate. Okay, let's try to unpack the anatomy of this heist. The numbers they were claiming were just physically unbelievable from the start.
Oh, completely. They reported serving 90 million meals in less than 2 years.
90 million.
At their peak, they were claiming over 120,000 meals were served every single day across almost 300 different meal sites.
To do that for real, you would need a massive logistical operation. Fleets of trucks, kitchens.
Huge kitchens, huge distribution centers. It just didn't exist. But the paperwork, the paperwork looked perfect, so the money kept flowing. The reality, though, was exposed by FBI surveillance.
Okay, so give us that contrast. What did the FBI actually find on the ground?
So they watched one site, for example. This one location was claiming to serve 6,000 meals every single day.
6,000. That's a huge number of people.
It is. But the FBI agents watching the place, they recorded an average of only about 40 visitors a day.
40, not 6,000.
40. So this wasn't, a small miscount. This was an industrial-scale fabrication, all designed to pull in federal dollars.
And this wasn't just one or two people. The cell here suggests a huge criminal enterprise.
It was massive. Federal authorities have indicted 78 suspects so far. Over 50 people have already pleaded guilty to their part in it.
And the ringleader, Amy Bach, the founder of FOF.
Found guilty. The legal consequences are coming down hard and fast. One of the first defendants to be sentenced, Mohammed Ismail, he got a 12-year prison sentence.
And restitution.
Well, yeah. He was ordered to pay back over $47 million. The government is treating this, and rightfully so, as a major crime against the public.
So where did that 97% go? We know it wasn't for food.
No. The conspirators, they funneled the money. They used dozens of shell companies to fund these just completely lavish lifestyles.
We're talking luxury homes.
Luxury homes, expensive cars, boats, electronics, jewelry, commercial real estate, both here in the U.S. and overseas. It's hard to think of anything more brazen.
Stealing child nutrition money to buy a yacht.
Pretty much. Which brings us to the real question. How on earth did this go on for so long? How did hundreds of millions of dollars walk out the door without anyone in charge stopping it?
And to answer that, we have to look at the systemic failures. The state agency in charge of oversight was the Minnesota Department of Education, the MDE.
Right. And the sources, especially the state audit, show that the MDE knew there was a problem long before the pandemic really opened the floodgates for funding.
How early are we talking?
As early as July 2019, months before anyone had even heard of COVID, MDE officials started documenting what they called concerning behavior. They noted meal claims that were just. They were physically impossible based on the size of FOF's operations at the time.
So if the alarms are going off in 2019, why didn't MDE just, cut off the money? They had the power to.
They did, and this is where the system itself gets turned into a weapon. When MDE first tried to stop the payments, FOF didn't argue about the numbers. They went straight to a legal strategy.
They threatened to sue.
They did, and they accused the state of racial discrimination against the communities FOF claimed to serve.
And that threat worked.
It worked perfectly. The state, clearly terrified of a politically damaging discrimination lawsuit, just retreated. Not only did they retreat, MDE actually started giving FOF substantial grants after that threat was made.
So the fear of legal action completely overrode their duty to protect taxpayer funds.
Absolutely. And that weakness was then cemented by the courts. Fast forward to 2021, the fraud is even bigger, and MDV tries again to slow down payments.
And they get blocked again.
Precisely. A Ramsey County judge stepped in. The judge basically warned MDE that they had a real problem if they didn't keep processing the payments. And then he actually held the state agency in contempt of court.
What does that actually mean, to hold a state agency in contempt for something like this?
It's a total game changer. It means they get a fine, in this case it was $47,500, and a direct judicial order to resume the payments. Now, for the people at MDE, this created what the sources call a chilling effect.
They were legally muzzled.
Exactly. They were so scared of being held in contempt again, of facing more fines, that they just stopped doing any real oversight. They just became check signers. The court effectively forced them to prioritize paying FOF over their duty to audit them.
That's the key, isn't it? The system broke because the fear of litigation paralyzed the regulator.
And the state's own audit later confirmed it. The Office of the Legislative Auditor, the OLA, their 2024 report was just scathing. It said MDE had inadequate oversight and was ill-prepared.
But didn't federal rules require them to deny applications from sponsors that couldn't perform?
They did, but MDE didn't use that power. The OLA report says they just relied on what the sponsors claimed instead of checking for themselves. And the MDE's own commissioner admitted it. He said the threat of lawsuits and bad press affected their decisions.
When your regulators are more afraid of bad PR than they are of massive fraud, you have a serious problem.
A catastrophic one. U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, who led the prosecution, he said Minnesota became a national poster child for public corruption because of this and, other potential fraud schemes they were seeing.
Other schemes?
Yeah, in emergency housing, autism therapy programs. It suggests a much deeper problem with how the state handles federal money.
Okay, so let's shift to the fallout from all this. Because the corruption had very real, very damaging effects on the local community.
It did. Because many of the people charged in the scheme were of Somali descent, it attracted immediate and, frankly, very harsh political targeting.
The sources mention former President Trump by name.
Yes, they document that he used really inflammatory language, calling the Somali community garbage. And this was followed by federal action. Immigration agents were surged into Minnesota in something called Operation Metro Surge,
which targeted Somalis for deportation without really distinguishing between who was a citizen and who wasn't.
Right. And that political response had an immediate, devastating effect on the ground. The Carmel Mall in Minneapolis, which is a huge hub for the Somali community, saw business just plummet.
And sources describe the mood there as, what, unease and fear.
Palpable fear. People started carrying their passports and other documents with them just to go run errands because they were afraid of being stopped.
That's incredible. But the community pushed back.
They did, very strongly. Local leaders pointed out that the vast majority of the 84,000 people of Somali descent in Minnesota are U.S. citizens or legal residents. They made it clear that the actions of a few criminals shouldn't define an entire community.
And there was some bipartisan support there, too.
There was. A Republican state senator, Jim Abler, defended the community very forcefully. His words were, "None of them are trash."
So, on one hand, we have severe criminal accountability, lots of indictments, guilty pleas, long sentences.
Yeah.
What about financial accountability? Are we getting the money back?
That's a much bleaker picture. Of the estimated $250 million that was stolen, as of early 2025, only about $75 million has been recovered.
So over $170 million is just gone.
Likely gone for good. It was either spent on things you can't recover, luxury experiences, or it was successfully laundered and moved overseas where the U.S. government just can't get to it.
So what's the big takeaway here for you, the taxpayer? This whole deep dive really shows the catastrophic mess that happens when government oversight is either incompetent or, maybe worse, just paralyzed by fear of lawsuits.
It allowed hundreds of millions of your dollars to be stolen in what was, at its heart, a pretty simple paper trail fraud. It's a very expensive lesson in why you need robust, impartial system integrity.
You need regulators who can actually regulate without fear of being punished for it.
And It's clear that while feeding our future was the biggest, it wasn't the only problem. The U.S. Attorney's comments, the audit reports, they all suggest potential fraud was flagged in other major social service programs in the state.
Which leaves you with a really important question to think about. If the systems meant to catch fraud were so easily shut down by a $250 million theft, even with red flags waving for years, how many smaller, less reported drains on taxpayer money are happening right now all across the country? Simply because the systems are designed to pay first and maybe, just maybe, ask the hard questions later.